Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual regular council meeting this evening. As we begin tonight's meeting, let us take a moment to acknowledge all of our local businesses who continue to feel the effects of the pandemic in their day-to-day operations. For those who are able, please support your local businesses with the same dedication they have supported our local service clubs, minor sports teams, and their countless other volunteer contributions. Now, if we can take a moment of silence to reflect on our combined purpose that brought us together this evening. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hallman with the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. Just before that, yesterday was October 4th, and it's a day when we honor the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people. And yesterday was to support grieving families and create opportunities for healing of their tragedies. And the violence experienced by Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people is Canada's national tragedy that impacts us all. With that said, I'll read our land acknowledgement. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the settlers arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Hallman. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? And again, seeing none. So first item is the minutes of previous meetings. The recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as presented. Council meeting September 28, 2020. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Gordick, Councillor Gerber. Are there any comments, questions, omissions, corrections? Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I just wanted to thank the clerk for the minutes and also just for putting on the list of reading material that was provided. I think the residents would be happy to maybe take a look at some of those for future reference. So thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the public meeting. It's a zone change application. This is a public meeting in respect of zone change application 07/20. We will hear all interested people who wish to speak on this matter. If the decision of council is appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, the tribunal has the power to dismiss an appeal if you do not speak at the public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed. I now declare the public meeting open. Persons attending as delegations at this meeting are required to leave their names and addresses, which will become part of the public record. And you are hereby advised that this information may be posted on the township's official website along with your email addresses if provided. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This zone change application proposes some amendments to the current zoning of 18 Hinks Street to accommodate redevelopment. The current zoning, Zone 3, allows for up to a 4-unit residential building. The current application proposes to remove the existing house and construct a semi-detached dwelling with accessory apartments. So that would be 4 units. But in addition to that, allow for a severance to also construct a single detached dwelling on the property with the potential for a secondary apartment. The list of proposed amendments are included within the report. Essentially, they deal with the unique shape of this property in order to accommodate redevelopment. Some variances are proposed to setbacks to accommodate those structures, and also to make adjustments to lot area requirements for the uses proposed. There were some comments and concerns raised through circulation of the application. Those are included within the report. Staff will take those into consideration along with any other comments that are raised through this public meeting. Some of the engineering reports that were prepared in support of the application are still under review. And at such time as we have comments back on those reports, along with all the information received through this public meeting and before, staff will return to council with a detailed report providing comments and addressing comments and concerns that have been raised to date.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Does council have any questions of a technical nature? Councilor Fisher?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Going from 7.6 and 7.5 meters to 4.5 and 4.7 seems like quite a drop in a setback. At what point does the township feel that it's too much?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, we will provide additional comments on that through a subsequent report. One of the unique situations with this property is the existing home is set back from the property, but is basically on the rear property line. So in order to accommodate a more reasonable setback from the rear property line, it necessitates moving the building forward. So that we will again go into those in more details and give consideration to other aspects that that are required to be looked at through front yard reductions, such as visibility and adequate parking. But again, we will provide more details in a subsequent report. But one of the main reasons the setback reduction is proposed is because of the size of the property and configuration don't accommodate standard setbacks, nor are they achieved with the current house on the property.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordick?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, Andrew, Mr. Martin, I just have 3 that I'm just going to throw out there questions. So do we have an expected timeline for the report to come back to council? And with that as well, the expectation of the region's report with the noise report, and also will the parking issue be looked at?
Through Mayor Armstrong, the expectation is that this would come back probably in November. We expect engineering comments shortly, and if they don't create any issues with the application as proposed, then we would proceed. With respect to the regional comments, those comments have actually since been addressed outside of the time this report was written. There are some noise warning clauses that the region is agreeable to having registered on title that would not necessitate the actual preparation of a noise and vibration analysis. And with respect to parking, we will comment on it now. The development does achieve all of the parking requirements of the zoning bylaw as proposed, but we will outline how they are achieved and provide additional comments about that in the subsequent report.
Follow up?
Yes.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Mr. Martin, with regards to the noise report, I know you said that it's not necessary, but what would have been the reason for requesting that? The property is not on the same side as the railroad, more so the other side of Hinks would have been. So I'm just wondering what would have been the reason for asking for that, please?
So the region of Waterloo highlighted that it's within a regulation radius of CN. And so they had provided comments to the applicant that if they didn't have anything from CN saying that a noise study was not required, that they would require it on their behalf. And so they kind of deferred to CN. Now the applicant hasn't been able to get any response back from CN. So instead of doing a study, ultimately the anticipated outcome of that was the implementation of certain criteria for inclusion of air conditioning, window glazing, and noise warning clauses. And the region agreed that that would reasonably be the outcome of any study, and is agreeable to having those clauses registered in an agreement Untitled. In theory, they could do a study and maybe those things aren't required, but I think the applicant is essentially saying that they're satisfied with the inclusion of those requirements in any development should zoning be approved in the future.
Thank you. No further questions. Before commencing with hearing from delegations, I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. Delegations will be allotted 10 minutes to speak and will be provided a 2-minute warning reminder when your 10 minutes is nearing completion. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed. You are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast via YouTube. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate muting and removal from the meeting. 1, interrupting counselors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about counselors, staff, or others, hate speech or defamatory comments. I will now call upon the delegations. First delegation is Mr. Craig Nichols.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Welcome, Craig. We can hear you.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Just wanted to say that we, Cindy and I and our family, we live directly beside this property. Our property is at 14 Steinman Street. Our side fence line runs directly adjacent to this property. When we moved here 3 years ago, we understood that there was one house, one building, one family that we would have to deal with on that side of our property. With the proposed changes, and now actually hearing tonight, the manager of planning was speaking, it was actually apartment buildings. I thought these were going to be dwellings. So that means there is potential of 6 families peering over my fence at my 3 teenage daughters. The past 2 weekends, this house has been vacant. There has been parties going on, kids looking over our fence. And that's why I'm bringing my objection to this, because we were dealing with one family, not 6, or Lord knows what else. Also, I can't say yes or no on what each one of you may vote against or for, but to change the zoning from 7 meters down to 4 also brings these properties even closer to my fence. The existing building, I guess their living room doesn't really look over our fence, just, a bathroom and I believe a bedroom. But I don't want to have to be dealing with renters peering over our fence anymore. Do you have anything to say?
No, you're saying it's.
Sorry, I'm just very nervous because normally don't speak in front of people. But it's just, it can't be allowed. I mean, I can't speak on each one of your behalves, but I don't think either one of you would like a house being torn down beside you to put up 6 rental units.
It's the privacy.
It's solely with a privacy thing with us. And, if you think that if you had 3 teenage daughters and a pool, I forgot to mention that, and we have a pool, I'm pretty sure you'd be quickly saying no to this. To the fact that now that I hear that they are going to be rental units. So I'm pretty sure that's all I have to say. I think I summed it up pretty quick. I think my 10 minutes is done.
Okay, thank you.
Now, should I push this?
Okay, thank you, Craig, for your presentation. Next is Cindy Moser.
Mr. Mayor, this is Craig again. Cindy's beside me and we share
Okay.
the same view.
Okay,
Same residence.
all righty.
Same residence.
So does Cindy wish to speak, or are you just,
No, he said it all. He said what we needed to say.
okay, thank you. Thank you both. Our next delegation is Rodney Schwartzentruber.
Mayor Armstrong, it appears though that Mr. Schwartzentruber is no longer waiting.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to Mark and Gloria Rathbone.
Everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Mark.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong and council. I'm Mark Rathbone. I live next door at 26 Hing Street. I have a few concerns. First of all, we've been here for over 35 years with a single dwelling family next door to us. Have had no issues before dealing with one family. Although there is a little bit of issue with our our fence line and our trees growing out of the fence, but nevertheless, that was an issue we'll deal with later. But I'm really concerned right now with the amount of parking that's available. We're looking now at having possible 4 families in the semi, or fourplex, if you want to call it that, plus the single family, which looks like it could be a duplex down the road. That could be 6 families. We have parking across the street. We're only parking on one side of our street, which is the opposite side of our homes. There is a driveway for the corner house. There's a driveway that exits for the daycare center. Then there's 2 other families. Now within there might be room to park 4 cars on that side of the street. The daycare are using that during the daylight hours for parking to pick up children. I know many times getting out of my driveway and I'm backing out, that there's always vehicles through the summer months, and it's very difficult to get out depending on where they're parking. I have a boat, I have a trailer so far, and it is becoming an issue. So now we're gonna put possibly 12 cars with 6 families in their driveway. Now 6 families having family relatives coming over, friends, parties, whatever. I really don't think there's going to be any place to park on the road. It would become a very big issue with me trying to get out or get into my driveway with the traffic coming down Hing Street off of Waterloo Street. That's my one point. The second point is why the setback for this single dwelling? Maybe I can ask the planning. Why the 6 feet setback or 6 meter setback rather than the 7'6" that it was supposed to be? I don't understand why they're bringing the single house forward. The other thing, another point I would like to make is how does that affect the value of my house? At our end of Hing Street, or at least half the Hing Street, was basically all single family dwellings. Now we have a fourplex down the road. Now we're getting into, now I don't want to say it's rental properties. Is that all going to be owners living in these properties, or is it going to be rental? Am I going to have to deal with people that really don't care about what goes on in the neighborhood or on the lawn or whatever? We have a little bit of issue now and again with people. So I really don't want to get into that, but I'm just saying, is the value of my property going to stay the same, or is it going to be devalued if I look at selling it down the road? The next point I'd like to make also is why the severance? Why couldn't it just be a semi in the middle of the lot? That would probably provide a lot better issue with myself as opposed to putting in 6. We seem to be making 5 concessions here for an owner that wants to build a couple semis and possibly sever the lot to make a 2-story single house. Well, that 2-story single house, we all know, is going to end up being a duplex. It's 1,200 square feet. And I think that's because it would be zoned, I guess. I'm not for sure, but I think every home in town now is zoned for a duplex. So yeah, I'm having an issue. Then it's going to be close to my property. When I built my house, or when my house was built, I added on a carport, and at time I wanted to close that in as a garage. The planning department said that I was too close to the property line to close it in for the fire department to have access to my backyard. So we needed that 3 feet clear opening into the backyard. Now maybe things have changed. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but now we're going to have a house that's going to be, if I can see this properly, Mayor, it looks like 3 meters from the property line would be the house. Is that going to be enough? Because it looks like there's going to be parking all down the side there. I'm not sure, but anyway, those are some of my concerns. And
the neighbor here, and
what's that? Sorry.
the neighbors there that were complaining about the backyard being right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's fine. I really have a big issue. Like, if we want to keep a single home there, it just looks like a monetary thing. And I know it looks attractive for council because now we've got 3 properties that we could at least potentially get tax money from, but I think we're just becoming an apartment type area, which I'm not looking forward to, and probably will move if that's going to be the case. As I said, I'm okay with putting a semi in if it's centrally inside or a duplex on the property, but now making 6 properties or 6 dwellings potential on one property, I think that's very unreasonable, and I would hope that council would consider that. I mean, it's not just one variance. We've got 5 variances going on here, which doesn't meet our standard of the Wilmot Township. Other than that, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Mark and Gloria. Does council have any questions of Mr. and Mrs. Rathbone? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Our next delegation is Sherry and Nelms.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Sherry.
Hi, it's Carrie, but thank you.
Sherry, sorry.
That's okay. People call me Siri because I always have something to say. So thank you for allowing me to speak today, Mayor Armstrong, Council, and then my neighbors, Mark and Gloria, Craig and Cindy, and Councillor Gorget's cat. So thank you for having me. It's nice to see a cat. Anyway, I did prepare a presentation. Can I share that with you?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to bring it over to the screen.
Excuse me, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Actually, the Zoom host will be putting it up, and they should be the ones sharing it.
Okay. Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
And we see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I put this presentation together just to give you some visuals of some of the things that are happening in the neighborhood. Obviously, you've heard from, you can see the fence behind the house, and that was Craig and Cindy. And then my house is to the left, which is not in this photograph, and Mark and Gloria are to the right of the property. So I took this today, just as a heads up. Next slide. So this is the house that's getting knocked down. I think as of this weekend, I think people have moved in. You can see it's a real mess. I'm kidding. So this is a century home and part of the heritage of New Hamburg that is getting knocked down. This was an ad from the MLS listing, and it was taken September 25th from online. Next slide. So the reason I'm speaking today is because I live at 10 Steinman Street. So my property backs onto the Hinks Street. And then you can see sort of my neighbors' houses surrounding that. It's a huge material change for myself. Cindy and Craig moved in. We moved in the same time. We had a conversation about, privacy. You can see that Craig's house is set back quite a bit from my property. I have the train tracks in front of me, and then I have the property behind me, and the big green box closest to my property is their shed, garage, workshop, and I don't really have a backyard. So, and I'll get into that. So one of the reasons I purchased my house was for safety. I came from a pretty bad situation and wanted to move to a small town to feel safe. Next slide, please. So I put a little video together of the property. You can see my property and the property line to the left of their garage, sorry. And I just thought you can get a real feel for what the street looks like. Thank you. So you can see the big, lofty, gorgeous trees. You can see the house. And then that car is actually from the daycare. So that's the exit, which you guys did a great job planning, by the way. There's no one that parks in front of my house. There's no parking on the other side of the street. I did not set that up, just so you know, it's not a ruse of any sort to show you that that was actually a natural occurrence. So I would like to, and the neighbors like to ask not to approve the severing of the lot into 3 and not accept the variances. The neighbors and I did have a short conversation when we first found out about the property, and the way we found out is there was people knocking on our doors because they were surveying the land. We hadn't heard anything about that before. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's an error in terms of what the planning is. So my garage is not listed on the plan that was submitted. The garage that is in the side or in the front of my house, side of my house, beside the property is about a foot off the road. It's been there for about 30 years. It's a blind spot. On the very corner of my property, there's the stop sign. And then there's also an existing addition onto the back of my house, which leaves 1.5 feet to the fence line. And my backyard is 9 feet long. And to put that into perspective, that is actually the same, it's the same length as it is the width for parking that they're putting next door. To also put that into perspective, that little addition actually is a small bathroom. So somebody sitting on the toilet in that bathroom would literally be 2.5 feet away from someone getting in and out of the car. I've also drawn in the pool here because I think it's part of the palimpsest of the area. Next slide, please. So our primary concerns, so I'm just going to move, there you go. My primary concerns are obviously the distance to the abutting properties. You know, we're single family homes in the periphery, and there's definitely some issues there, and I'll go into more detail. The number of people and the number of residences, which the other neighbors have already talked about. Traffic and parking is a huge issue. I'm wondering what's going to happen with garbage and snow removal because there doesn't appear to be anywhere on the property for garbage. And really, it's a material change to the enjoyment of our existing homes. Next slide, please. The number of people. So I misunderstood, but the number is still, 16, 17 people. So I looked at the StatsCan data for New Hamburg, and the average household size is 2.7 people. That's a substantive material difference to the established neighborhood. 5 residences with allowable basement apartments means 10 potential residences with the average of 2.7 people inhabiting. So the number is actually 6. So we're looking at about 16, 17 people and not the 27 I have indicated here. The largest segment of households in New Hamburg are married couples with 2 children. If we use that as a model, we're looking at quite a substantive difference. So we're looking at, a fair size that's, like more than half of a classroom. Next slide, please. So here's a look at the existing property. So you can see where all of the neighbors are. You can see the 1.5 feet from my house to the fence line, and you can see it's quite substantive, the distance from the house to my home. And also, one family looking at the pool, and it's an okay distance to the other neighbor's house as well. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So when you look at the existing, this is a satellite view from Google. If you look at the cars in terms of scale, you can see the distance that my backyard butts onto the other garage. Like basically the car will fit right in that spot. It's literally 9 feet. So at the biggest area. You can also see that my garage is right there and everything else. So it just gives you a little bit of scale. Can we have the next slide, please?
Just to let you know, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay, so I'm going to talk really fast. So if we look at the plan, this is the proposed plan and it overlays the existing. And I'm going to go to the next slide, please. All right, so if you look at the plan, where the yellow marks are, that's where the parking is. I don't know where the parking is for the large house on the other side. It is 3 parking spots on either side, and they are front to back. So The way it's laid out is parking. They're going to be jostling cars and everything else. You have a daycare literally across the street coming through rush hour. My garage is in the way, so it's a bit of a blind spot. And then you have the stop sign on the corner. You know, there's going to be 6 spots, and it's definitely an issue. Can we have the next slide, please? How the proposal physically affects me. So the main level of my house, I virtually have no backyard. So my living room, dining room, and bathroom windows at the shortest is 1.5 feet from the fence and 9 feet at the largest. When you look at where their garage is right now, some of the house is going to be on there. It is going to block out my light. It is going to block out my whole backyard, and my view will literally be cars, and it will also be another house that is probably 10, 15 feet away from my back windows. Currently, I look at, you know, I look at the garage. My upper level, my main bedroom, you can, and my main bathroom, you can look straight in. And then again, my garage is, you know, backing out. I'm concerned, especially as people come up to the stop sign. Next slide, please.
Mayor Armstrong, that's time right now.
Thank you. So, are you still there?
I am.
Okay. Yeah, your time is up. Did you have anything, a quick wrap up, or is that it?
I do. The rest of the slide, if we could just share it with the counselors, that would be great. It's what I really wanted to discuss is, you know, obviously parking, there's the pool material changes. I'm concerned about construction and how it's going to affect my livelihood as I work from home. And I have a summary of sort of requests. I'm not a planning person. I'm not, you know, I don't know much. I've read as much as I can, but that's it. But my largest concern is my privacy, with the house being built literally, you know, 9 feet from my my house. I'd like to know sort of what the interruptions are and that kind of thing. And then again, parking.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions or concerns, there's my phone number and my email address, and I'm happy to chat with everyone.
Ms. Middleholtz?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just wanted to advise the delegation that as your presentation was received after the council package was prepared, your presentation will be added as an appendices to our minutes for this meeting. So council, as well as the public, will see it in our meetings, in our meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of council have a question? Sherry? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And the last delegation that we have listed is Mr. Sam Head. Welcome, Sam. You are muted yet.
Mute.
There
How's
you go.
that?
That's better.
Thank you. I think this is the first time I've been able to make contact on the Zoom meetings on the in the past with my old age. The residents have raised a lot of questions. I don't think I can answer them all in the time that's allowed, but I would like if I got copies of their comments, and obviously from the minutes, I'll be able to address some of those concerns. If you look at the plans that were submitted and look at the existing situation, we have removed the garage next to the neighbor that was just speaking. We've pulled the buildings, the proposed buildings forward so that we are away from the existing pool in the backyard. That's part of the reason that very insisted. It improves the situation by giving more space back there between the new house and the pool and the existing house on the corner. We've contacted the railway regarding the noise, and as Andrew explained, we've come to an agreement with the region to address the noise through air conditioning the units, double glazed windows, and warning clauses to people that buy these units in the future. The proposal complies with the township official plan in terms of providing increased density. It's a provincial policy statement and regional official plan policies as well to include infilling in these existing areas that have full services. So that's what we're proposing to do. Question about the new houses lowering property values in the neighborhood. I don't know if you looked at real estate lately, but the average single family house is now in the $700,000 range. So I can't see the introduction of new houses dropping the value of the existing house in an older neighborhood. The question of traffic, the road is designed for the traffic. All the municipal services are available to the property. Someone raised a question about the property by using the existing sanitary sewer. I suspect that's not going to happen. Each of these units, I understand from the engineering department, require its own individual sanitary and water connection, and those will be provided. As Andrew indicated, there is sufficient parking on the site to follow our requirements. Those basically are my comments, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. And if not, I will work with Andrew Martin on addressing the concerns of the neighbors in a follow-up report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Samuel. What would be the height of the homes, and is it a proposed fence going around the property too?
The homes will probably be two-story, the semis and the single family. I suspect they'll both be 2 stories. I haven't seen the contractor's drawings for them yet, but I'm assuming they'll be 2 stories. They're typical single family and semi-detached units, which are basically 2 stories in height.
Councillor Fenning?
Sorry, it took me a second to get it to unmute. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, thank you to all the delegations. I found that the imagery was particularly enlightening. Mr. Head, if you could just, or perhaps the manager of planning, there were a few comments about how many people and how many living units we're talking about exactly. So I think it might be useful just for the record to state, my understanding is that the one building is proposed to be a semi-detached, which would ultimately be a maximum of 4 potential units. And the single family dwelling with the zoning, the way that it is potentially offering a basement apartment or what's called a secondary unit. Perhaps the manager of planning or Mr. Head could just confirm and clarify, because I think that there's some confusion in people's understanding of exactly what the terms mean.
So Mr. Martin, or who's going to take that?
Oh, thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, Councillor Fenning summarized it correctly, how the zoning would allow essentially a semi-detached dwelling with conversions to create apartments. So that'd be 4 units, and the single, in theory, could be converted to create an apartment within that as well to make it 2 units. So a total of 4 units on one property, and then potentially 2 units on a severed lot is what the plan would support.
Councillor Fisher?
Yeah, through you again, Mayor, to Mr. Head. Yeah, I had asked about a fence line across. Is there going to be a fence? And also, are these going to be rental units or are they going to be for sale? Thanks.
These units will be for sale. It's not been determined if fencing is required. The township, Andrew Martin will advise in his report whether fencing is required and the type of fencing that might be required. A privacy fence may be the answer to some of the concerns, a solid wooden fence rather than chain link. But that's something that we haven't decided yet.
Okay, thank you. I see no further questions. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you. Members
See
of
you.
council, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. We will. No, there were no further people wishing to address council on this matter.
Go back and ask council if there are any questions of the first delegation.
Yeah, okay. The first delegation, Craig and Cindy are still on the line. Are there any questions from council for Craig and Cindy? See none. So thank you. So I now declare the public meeting closed. Yeah, I guess we should check and see if there is anyone else that wishes to address council. Ms. Murray?
We have no one else waiting to speak.
Thank you. Okay, so public meeting is closed. The recommendation that report DS 2020-022 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There are no presentations, delegations, and consent agenda. There is none. So the first report is the procedural bylaw. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Municipalities across Ontario are now in the midst of discussing the ongoing procedures surrounding electronic participation in meetings that will continue to be in place in the absence of an emergency declaration. Even without the provincial declaration, physical distancing and gathering restrictions remain, as will the need for accommodations for people who are not ready to resume an in-person meeting requirement, or those who are self-isolating but are otherwise well. When the pandemic is no longer a factor, members of council may also have other commitments or circumstances that would benefit from electronic participation, such as personal or business travel, family needs, and illness or injury. Quite simply, this amendment to the procedural bylaw will permit that while allowing members to continue being part of the discussion and voting. For council meetings only, staff is recommending that the chair be physically present unless we are in an emergency, and that 48 hours be provided for electronic participation, again, unless we are in an emergency. The onset of the 2019 novel coronavirus required us to act quickly to make electronic participation a reality, both procedurally and technically. The Information and Legislative Services and Corporate Services teams worked together to make this new process as painless as possible, and I would like to thank them for their effort and dedication. Electronic participation in a legislative context refers to council and committees of council and how they conduct business. However, electronic participation has taken on a new meaning in the democratic context, in that our meetings have been opened up to the public in a way that we have not experienced previously. Prior to the pandemic, I believe the Township of Wilmot YouTube channel had about 9 or 12 subscribers. As of this afternoon, we have 168. Council meeting views have a significant range, but are typically between a few dozen and a few hundred views. Some residents have provided positive feedback, on virtual meetings, and they seem to be well received, with an encouragement to continue live streaming and posting to YouTube. Staff are improving our processes and procedures as new lessons are realized and opportunities present themselves. As was mentioned in the previous meeting, staff have met to discuss continued online meetings and then transition through to hybrid meetings where several participants are present in person and others remain online. Council and the public can expect more information on this topic during the 2021 budget. If council has any questions, I'll be more than happy to respond.
Thank you, Ms. Middleholtz. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. Ms. Middleholtz, I wanted to ask you a question about the 48-hour time frame. It caused me to reflect on post-pandemic realities of behaviors that will change, I think, in people in general. So just to make it blatantly personal, if my children previous to the pandemic had, a stomach bug, but I wasn't personally experiencing the stomach bug, I would have come to the township and participated in the meeting. Post-pandemic, there is no way that I would do that if my household was experiencing any kind of flu-like symptoms. I would stay home even if I was well. So if that happened on a Sunday, I wouldn't have the opportunity to give 48 hours notice, but I wouldn't want to bring a virus of any kind to anybody. So with that, I'm concerned about the 48-hour time frame. So I did some research, and the municipalities of Durham and Mono, they also use the language of members must notify the clerk prior for obviously all the logistical necessities that would come with that. But because of those things and how deeply I would feel about not wanting to be put in a situation as an elected official to keep, staff and members of the public safe if my household was experiencing something, but that would put me in a very unique situation. So I would ask that the 48 hours be omitted, but obviously that notice should still be provided to the clerk with as much notice as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yes, certainly. If we were to survey all across the province, we're going to find examples of various wording. And 48 hours was provided in one of the examples I looked at, but by no means is that something that we have to adhere to. If that is the will of council to remove the 48 hours and simply that it to provide notice to the clerk in writing, then that is sufficient for me. My thinking along the 48 hours was to provide as much notice as possible. I'm going to say mostly technical need to make sure that what was needed was in place for IT services. I don't know if I don't want to put the director of corporate services on the spot, certainly, but if that is something that technically doesn't provide a challenge for them, then and council wishes it to not be 48 hours, then I'm fine with making that amendment. And the bylaw can be read a first, second, and third time and passed in open council, carried as amended is how we would do that.
Any follow-up, Councillor Hallman?
Thank you, through the mayor. I would ask for council support on that that friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Middleholtz. I was also going to bring up just the 48 hours. I was thinking more along the lines of just during one of our summer meetings or something like that, if someone happened to be away out of town and a traffic accident or something made somebody delayed, and we tend to travel over the weekends. So again, my concern was the 48 hours. So while I didn't think about the sick, because I no longer have little ones at home, I do agree post-pandemic that our health concerns are far more reaching than what they would have been. Again, if somebody in my home came home with any flu-like symptoms, I certainly wouldn't want to expose my fellow council people and staff to any kind of potential virus concern. So I think the 48 hours is, especially because our meetings are on a Monday. So if something was to happen over the weekend, I think it just kind of leaves us a little open to not being able to adhere and let one of our council members show up. So I'd also agree with Councillor Hallman to remove that 48-hour notice.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I, as I often do, see both perspectives, and I can see a reason to have the 48 hours in order to have staff be able to ensure that things are in place to participate effectively. But of course, the scenarios brought up by Councillor Holman and Councillor Godek are very much valid and possible, especially you know, with having young children or traveling. So I'm on the fence, I suppose, about it. If staff feel that that is something they can comply with and be able to manage, then I have no problem with removing the 48 hours. If staff feel that it's going to be problematic, I think for me, one of the other thoughts that I have on it is that we review our bylaws and we have, you know, ability to change it if it's not working for us. So that's something that, you know, whichever way we go with this, I think, you know, it's not carved in stone. And so much of what's happening right now is a bit flying by the seat of our pants, if you like. We don't, you know, there's so many changes in the world. And I think that it has been extremely positive for our community to be able to participate more readily in the fashion that is fitting for today's world. So I am really happy to see that we're going to be able to continue this once the pandemic is over. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Fenning. Councillor Hallman, you have another thought?
Thank you, through the mayor. I did want to just add one more other piece if possible. Is it possible to also include language that votes shall be recorded? For the last couple of council meetings, I wasn't able to attend over the video. And the last one, I enjoyed that I was able to participate with voting in that unique situation. So perhaps all votes during a meeting where some members are participating a lot electronically shall be recorded votes. I don't know, I just quickly jotted that down and thought maybe language like that could be added as well.
Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Certainly, that is something that we could add. However, adding the recorded votes when we are in an experience such as this, where all hands being raised are visible, I'm not sure if it would necessarily have a benefit. I think what we would do, as opposed to making an amendment to the procedural bylaw, I think it would be something of more of an operational change, that when a person is participating electronically, however, it doesn't include video, that we then record votes. If we were to make that more of an operational matter for when we are preparing our minutes, would that satisfy? Okay. So noted.
That's good, Councillor Hallman. Okay, Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, if staff is okay with, if they feel they can handle waiving the 48 hours, I would just point out, I would think that the situations that Councillor Hallman and Councillor Gordike mentioned, you know, family illness and, you know, unable to get to the meeting because of travel, you know, something short-term accident related, to me, that would fall under the emergency provisions. And to me, it would still sort of apply. I guess it would just be a matter of what we consider an emergency or not. But to me, if it's Monday afternoon and all of a sudden there's a child ill that wasn't ill on Sunday or Saturday, you know, to me that would fit under the emergency provisions. Or, you know, stuck in an accident, can't get back, it's Monday afternoon, you know, we're still on the 400, something like that. But, you know, just a thought. I guess it just sort of depends on what our comfort level is with how elastic we want to make emergencies versus just lifting the 48 hours altogether. Either one works for me.
Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through Mayor Armstrong. So the way the wording is within the bylaw, it's actually for declared emergencies, not just emergencies, which I mean, when you think about it, making that sort of a change where it's not declared emergency, but with the exception of in an emergency, I'm not sure. That's more of up to council to decide. We can remove the word declared, or we can remove the 48 hours altogether. But we haven't heard from the Director of Corporate Services, and I'm sorry, I don't know if he has a comment as to whether or not that poses a technological challenge to IT services or not. That may be something he needs to get back to us on, but he may want to comment.
I think I'd be comfortable saying that our IT services team would be up to the task. I also would anticipate that council would be respectful of their timelines and the fact that they are Monday to Friday staff generally, though they work a lot outside of those hours. But the sooner we're made aware that you're not able to attend and they have to accommodate any technical needs, our group would jump in and look after it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was going to say that I'm pretty sure that, we can have a discussion with the IT staff and be able to come up with a solution as to if the 48 hours is absolutely necessary, and the fact that, as Mr. Kelly put it, to be respectful of IT and give them fair warning, which would be as soon as possible on the Monday. So, but that's something that'll have to be worked out with the IT people. Okay. Councillor Fanning?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Given that corporate services is confident they can accommodate on shorter notice, I'm much less concerned about that. One of the other things, though, that I think about in terms of when we're putting policies in place, in general, when I'm writing policies or contemplating policies, I think about not the characters or people who are currently sitting around whatever table or horseshoe we are at currently, but going forward, what if it's none of us here? What if someday in the future, someone were to be elected who perhaps was not quite so respectful of staff's commitment and time, and again, not saying that that person would be a terrible human being, but we are all fallible. And so we have to try and write policies and procedures that take into account potential eventualities, not just the personalities that we are currently interacting with. And to me, that's where having a limit that is able to be flexed when there is an emergent situation makes more sense than completely removing the restriction. So putting in the 48 hours, but saying and keeping the declared emergency, but perhaps adding that by decision of the head of council or vote of the remaining council in another emergent situation, or simply when, if there's a, and maybe the clerk has better words because I'm coming up with a bit of a word salad right now. Hopefully you understood that garbled mess that I made of it.
Ms. Meadowholt, you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm not going to say I have better words on the spot either, but I think I understand what Councillor Fanning is talking about. And we want to also ensure that we're not becoming, because I'm just trying to play out perhaps those scenarios that we're talking about there, and using Councillor Gordick's scenario of a car accident. And, oh, well, it's within 48 hours, but let me just quickly poll the rest of council to see if that is okay. I find that may not be received, quite depending on the type of emergency that's being encountered. I think to have something in there to say 48 hours in the absence of an emergency or something to talk about an emergency, so that if there is a car accident on the 401, you're unable to get through. If a little one is at home and ill, or some other thing that we can't think of right now on the spot, that that human side of us allowing for leniency. Of course, we all have that from time to time, where we need that from our the people around the horseshoe and fellow staff members. So I think that's something that can be worked into the bylaw to allow for that without the stringent need to poll the rest of council necessarily.
Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor, I'm okay with removing the 48 hours and adding as much time frame as possible to allow for IT to make the adjustments.
Okay, thank you. Well, I tend to agree that we should, I mean, basically what we're doing here tonight is the extending the electronic participation. I think the time frame is something that can be further discussed and investigated. And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had with IT just to get their comfort zone. If everybody's okay with that. Okay. So I think that's something that's probably subject to investigation. So we have a recommendation. If there are no further, Councillor Hallman.
Thanks for the mayor. Just clarifying then, so are we deferring this until IT has time to comment? Or are we, or is the clerk going to just make a friendly amendment to be adding, adjusting the language to requiring 48 hours notice unless there's a unique emergency?
Well, I'm open to whatever it is that we want to do. I mean, I was just suggesting that we will do this with and exempt the time frame for now and allow the investigation, but we can defer this if necessary, because this is meant to be in place when the pandemic's over. And at this point in time, we are a long way off from that occurring. Mr. Kelly, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I would just say if anything that I've brought up causes any hesitation or concern over that removal of the 48 hours, I don't want that to be the case. All I'm saying is I expect council to be courteous with IT's time, and they will be accommodating and as Carl says, mobile and agile employees that are there to help you when they need to. So I have no concerns from a staff perspective with it being removed.
Okay, Mr. Gerber.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the consensus is to remove it. And then at some point, if we find it being an issue or a problem, we can add some language back in just to make sure that, somebody hasn't taken in 7 meetings in a row from some other province or something.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, perhaps this is directed more to Mr. Kelly or to our IT services if they're still available. Is there a deadline, like say 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, that would make it uncomfortable? Maybe that can't be put into the bylaw because our meeting times could change. But is there at least a bare minimum notice for corporate services to be aware of a personal emergency? And maybe even that's the wording that we put in there as an addition, is personal emergency, which might cover a bit of a range there.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I would say no. There's not a specific time frame. Every IT type of issue has many different facets to it. So putting a definition that says this much time is required, we've seen here, we make changes on the fly with minutes to go before these meetings. So as I said, they're an adaptable group, and I don't think they've failed us to this point. Full faith and trust in that they can can get this done in the time it needs to, but that council understands that it's not just at the snap of fingers.
Okay, well, I think that the consensus here is that we're going to just drop the 48 hours and just amend it to drop the 48 hours, and we'll just carry on and have a vote. What's that?
As much notice as possible.
Yeah, and to make sure that maybe we can just change it to as much notice as possible. You know, if you can give 48, that's great. But if not, then we'll take what we can get by the sounds of it. So the recommendation that report number ILS 2020-26 be received for information, and that bylaw number 2020-36 be endorsed as amended. Moved by Councillor Gordick, second by Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the supplementary agreement with CreateScape Waterloo Region. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. The agreement before council is in response to the council-approved pause in the expansion or investment of the Prime Minister's path. Staff discussed the matter with our solicitor, who proposed this agreement to address what was not accommodated for in the original agreement, namely a pause in the project where a statue had already been commissioned and was nearing completion. The proposed agreement allows for the pause while still upholding the legal obligations of the municipality. Having the statues in storage will allow for the consultations to take place in the manner dictated by the notice approved by council on July 27th, 2020. Following the posting of this report in the agenda package, a couple members of the public reached out to me regarding the original agreement and the structure and reporting responsibilities of the Prime Minister's path. Subsequently, I posted an amendment on the Township website calendar and newsfeed, which included a posting on Twitter. I also updated the Prime Minister's Path webpage with this information. Members of the public who continue to have questions following this meeting are encouraged to reach out to me and ask questions. You can find the Township phone number on the website or email me at clerks@wilmot.ca. I welcome any questions that council may have.
Any questions from council? Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. As you had mentioned, Ms. Middleholtz, there had been some queries raised with regards to the original agreement with CreateScape. And so I've had a couple of questions posed to me, and I'm just wondering if perhaps we can go over them. So the first one with the original agreement, point 3, it mentions that in furtherance of this objective, CreateScape shall consult with the township on the written agreement that is to be used with artists as part of the commissioning process, with a view to incorporating in the written agreement such terms as the township may reasonably require to be included. So my question is, does the township have any input in the commissioning process, for example, to ensure that that provides accurate balance with regards to the history? Just as that has been brought up before. So I'm just curious if we have any input, and then I have a couple more questions. I'll just go one at a time though with Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So my experience with this is that representation on the Prime Minister's path has been both my position as well as the curator and director of Castle Kilbride, as well as the two chairs of the Castle Kilbride Advisory Committee and the Heritage Wilmot. Thank you. And so it is through that consultation process with the staff as well as those appointed members that consultation has occurred. However, my time on the Prime Minister's path has been fairly short. So I'm not sure if the curator or curator director of Castle Kilbride wishes to expand on that.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to
Yes.
Councillor Gord. So my time on the committee, so Ms. Milholtz is correct. So the collectively, the group of members that have been on the committee will discuss, provide some feedback to the artist that is selected on whether it's symbols or ideas on how it goes, but it is constantly evolving. So there certainly would be some input, definitely from the committee as a whole.
So next question. What's the township's process, through you, Mayor Armstrong, sorry. What's the township's process for overviewing the development of the educational program? And where are the educational components of the PM path? And does the township not have to incur any costs for the education? And if so, how is that funded?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So for the educational program, there are people from outside of the municipality. I believe it's University of Nipissing. Is it? Yeah, University of Nipissing, who they're the ones who are creating the program. The program is provided. They come to the table at the committee meetings and discuss with the committee as a whole as to what it is that they're going to be providing, their plans sort of for the future and whatnot. Then they provide the information to me specifically, because I'm the one who usually posts it on the township website. So if you go to the Prime Minister's Path webpage, there is different links or different things that you can click on. It comes down and then it has all sorts of information in there by Prime Minister. I'm sorry, I don't have the page memorized exactly, but so there's different tabs that you would go into, certainly by different Prime Minister. And then I'm not sure, I can't recall if it's at the bottom. There's a separate one that has the educational component broken down by sort of grade grouping. So if you're dealing with really young ones, it's age appropriate to them all the way up through to high school, and it's broken down by that. And there's various resources in that if that information's in there, and people who are coming here as a school group, they are directed to that information to be able to help guide their program. Did I answer all of those questions, Councillor Gordick?
Costs, Ms. Middleholtz.
Sorry.
So how is that funded?
So we, to be honest, that's something I don't know how it's funded. But we don't pay for it. So where I believe it's either part of some students. Oh, sorry, the director curator, Castle Kilbride, can answer that question. But I know I haven't signed off on a bill for it. So.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just want to add a little bit more onto what Don was originally saying about the resource material, because I think at times there's a lot of PDFs that you can click on, but essentially when you click on the educational activities, if you go specifically to Sir John A, you'll find some information that references Indigenous material as well there. And then the other area she was referring to on resource materials and lots and lots of books. There must be maybe 30 or so books, and then I think over 10 reference residential schools as well. So there's the group that does it, as Don suggested, is or confirmed is Nipissing University, and it's the concurrent education program, so training teachers, and the professor there along with her students create the curriculum. And then CreateScape would be bringing it to us as well, and then we would post. So it's following the curriculum, and it's balanced, and it's worthy to take a peek at.
You. Again, through you, Mayor Armstrong, just a couple more. Point 8, with regards to the Heritage Advisory Committees. so does this mean that there's 2 township representatives on the advisory committee, whereas CreateScape has 3? So does that mean that the township is outnumbered with regards to a vote or comment? And just for clarification on that.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So no, there's 3 representatives from CreateScape. There is the 2 chairs. There is myself. There is the director curator, Castle Kilbride, who sit on this committee.
With regards to that, then with point 8, it doesn't mention. It mentions 2 people from the advisory committee of Wilmot Heritage and Castle Kilbride. So, and then Mr. Caputo, Mr. Roger, and Mr. Bourgeois. So it seems to be, as far as the point 8 is mentioning, it doesn't mention that the curator or yourself are on that committee. So I'm not sure if maybe perhaps that's something for us to look at.
Certainly, Councillor, through you, Mayor Armstrong, certainly that's something that we can look at. Both of our positions have been longstanding. My predecessor was on it as well, longstanding on the committee. I am appearing to have a technical difficulty, and I'm unable to bring up my agreement. I don't know why, a little PDF issue.
Okay.
But that's something I can get back to council on.
Thank you. Just, and then, so that kind of answers my question, because I'm just wondering then, point 15 talks about a dispute with respect to the path. So it looks like there'd be 3 against 2. So I'm wondering about how that would be resolved. But if you're saying that it basically is 4-3, then at least there's an overriding vote. Or just yourself and Ms. Locke not have a vote on any kind of disputes with regards to the Prime Minister's path and the committee.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So in my experience, dispute doesn't generally happen. This is usually a committee that comes to a consensus, working together, fostering different ideas, working together on different aspects. I can't, as I said, short time, but I cannot recall where it actually came down to a vote, where people are voting on 2 different sides of an issue. We thus far have always come to a consensus.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you very much to both Ms. Locke and Ms. Middleholtz.
Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just wanted to say that this agreement looks like a reasonable step in addressing the concerns with the contract until we can move forward with the consultation. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation in our community.
Thank you. Councillor Hallman.
Through the mayor, I did want to just comment briefly on thanking staff for including comments on the Truth and Reconciliation within the report here. So I also have a follow-up question regarding the education piece, because it's just the conversation with Councillor Gordick just made me reflect on a few things. So with a municipality providing education, are we connecting with the Ministry of Education on providing educational resources to youth in the community? I'm trying to connect these layers, and it's just raising some concerns for me that way.
Ms. Locke.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. So the education material would be following the Ontario curriculum with the teachers, the profs, and the students that are writing it. And it's listed on the website. So it's a standalone website within the township on the Prime Minister's path. And essentially anyone can access that. And it's a resource directly for teachers. It could be for anyone really, whether you're resident or family or visitors to our area, and you can download it. It evolves. It's in draft form, and as the path changes, the curriculum can be enhanced or changed as well. And it's something that you can use on your own, so not necessarily teaching per se. So when people tour, they can wander the Prime Minister's path if they have we'll tell them about the tools, or many times they'll visit it prior. But it's a resource tool available when you're at the path, or that teachers can bring into their classrooms as well.
Okay, thank you. Yep. No further questions there, Council. We do have one delegation, Mr. Bailey. Welcome, sir.
Good evening to everybody. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, Wilmot staff, and those of you following along at home. I'm speaking tonight with respect to agenda item 11.1.2, the suggested amended agreement between Wilmot Township and CreateScape Waterloo Region. First, I want to say that if I produced a song that was deeply hurtful to a group of people, not only would I be horrified, but I would be deeply hurt and would immediately make amends to the people that had been hurt and would seek to further my understanding and endeavor to not do it again. The fact that Wilmot, CreateScape Waterloo Region, and a small group of very stubborn residents are continuing to defend and pursue this project in spite of the approved motion from Councillor Hallman to pause the project until proper consultations can be undertaken and reviewed is very troubling, to say the least. Clearly, the consultation process includes input from the PM Path Committee, concerned residents, Indigenous peoples, and a consultant, and staff. Nobody has been excluded from the process despite vitriolic verbiage from certain individuals. Now is the time for due diligence and consultation. Mr. Robert Roth, a non-Wilmot resident and non-Wilmot taxpayer, has been given a voice in his presentations and documents presented to council, while actual residents and taxpayers in Wilmot have requested that their letters be included in the agenda and have been ignored. There are numerous problems with this project, and the transparency with which Wilmot taxpayers have been informed with respect to ongoing costs for legal fees already incurred. In preparing and reviewing the amended agreement you will review later this evening, staff costs with respect to every aspect of the PM Path project, and this amended agreement will force Wilmot Township taxpayers to assume ownership of the statues in order to relieve the burden of storage from CreateScape Waterloo Region and allow them to fulfill their obligation to the artists upon a delayed or canceled commissioning of the statues. Why should Wilmot taxpayers take on this financial burden and relieve CreateScape Waterloo Region from these costs? Number two, I requested a copy of the original agreement from CreateScape Waterloo Region, upon which the amended agreement, if approved, will join together to form a new agreement. There is specific language in the original agreement with regard to the educational components under section B7. The township has agreed to undertake the development and ongoing operation of an educational program with respect to the PM Path. Clearly, the costs associated with developing an educational platform that would need to be approved and endorsed by the ministry are well beyond what Wilmot has earmarked taxpayer funds for, and clearly this single point is often mentioned as a justification for the existence of this project. And yet, PM Path co-chair Jim Rogers has stated in media interviews that Wilmot has failed to create any kind of meaningful education because we are a small community with limited resources. The Easter eggs added to the statues all appear to be positive iphotos and certainly included none of the horrific or troubling aspects of these historical figures. The curriculum provided to Wilmot by University of Nipissing is clearly insufficient for a fulsome historical exploration and proper and complete telling of history in its draft form, and Mr. Roger has acknowledged as such. If Wilmot is not prepared to allocate significant resources to develop a ministry-approved educational program around the PM Path, it draws into question the entire justification for this project to exist here, and I would encourage councillors to reconsider their support of this amended agreement with CreateScape Waterloo Region. But this puts us at odds with the commitment taxpayers with respect to there being no cost to taxpayers. Ms. Middleholtz, I emailed earlier this afternoon for clarification. There is missing text in the copy of the agreement I received at the end of page 1, which now specifically pertains to the amended agreement and Wilmot's obligations to CreateScape Waterloo Region with respect to commissioning and timelines with regard to final payments to artists. There is either some sloppy oversight by the legal team representing Wilmot in 2016, or there is a following page that has been redacted. Can you please clarify this? Which is it?
I'm going to say neither. First of all, nothing is hidden. That agreement exactly, well, my apologies. Three things are hidden because I redacted signatures from what has been put out in the public facing, so that the signatures of the people who signed the agreement, although their names are present on the agreement, but nothing has been hidden from the agreement that I have on file. Okay, what happened in 2016? I'm very sorry, but I cannot comment as to why that page has been cut off. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't. I did my best to try and find the agreement, but I couldn't find what happened to the remaining text on page 1 until it goes on to page 2, where it's been split. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you on as to what that missing text was.
Right. It says any commissions or fees or similar charges payable by CreateScape to the, and then it cuts off and then it goes directly to section 2. So it's either like section 1 could have been 1A, B, C, D, E, F, and we don't know if they've been omitted. So I was just concerned about that. So I appreciate that clarification.
You're welcome.
Secondly, councillors voting this evening in good faith based on the information provided to them to either approve or defer the acceptance of this amended agreement will be responsible for the outcome of this decision for 10 years after they leave office. As to taxpayers, we must assume that councillors are receiving solid and sound legal direction from staff and that the information before them is complete and thorough. Yet there are several problematic issues with respect to the PM path, one of which is the PM path committee referred to earlier this evening, which exists somehow outside of the standard protocols for standing committees under the Municipal Act. It seems that they are not required to provide an agenda, minutes, or any accountability to Wilmot taxpayers. Clearly, staff time and resources are being and have been allocated to this committee, yet we as taxpayers see no evidence of proper due process or accountability. Why are we as Wilmot taxpayers not entitled to know the members of this shadow committee, its activity and its records? Is this committee ongoing or has it been disbanded? This project has been problematic everywhere it has appeared, and repeatedly other communities and organizations have moved to distance themselves from it. We have repeatedly been assured that this project was supposed to have been zero cost to taxpayers, yet it's clear that there have been significant costs with respect to staff time, legal costs, maintenance, and the unfunded fledgling educational project that Wilmot committed to. I actually do live and pay taxes in Wilmot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Council have any questions of Mr. Bailey? Seeing none, thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I am concerned about the missing language off of that first page. I'm wondering if Ms. Middleholtz could potentially reach out to, and please, if you have already, is there any way that we can obtain a complete document, perhaps from CreateScape or one of the lawyers involved? Because as has been pointed out, it's extremely ill-advised to vote on something that may incur costs or unknown at this point for myself, unknowns.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, certainly that's something that I can reach out and discuss with CreateScape as to what happened. 2016, our solicitor, I'm not sure if it was the same company that we have now, or if we were with a different firm, and I can reach out and find out what happened. I did a search of our records here, and I wasn't able to locate the information, and I can provide that response back to council.
Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So with that being said, I'm not comfortable voting on this amendment with regards to that, because I'm not sure what amendment I'm voting on, being that the original agreement is not complete as far as what we can see. So we did vote to pause and move those statues already into storage. So I'm assuming we've done that based on the fact that SJAM has been moved. And if not, then I'm more comfortable with seeing a proper agreement so that my liability from 10 years from now is not coming back to haunt me. So I'm not going to be voting on this amendment for this evening until we get a full agreement, or at least can verify what that first page is.
Ms. Middleholtz.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, the agreement as it stands now, with regards to the receiving of completed statues, that the township will receive them, and then that CreateScape will install them. So without having this supplemental agreement in place, it doesn't allow for the non-installation of them once received. What council has approved on in the past was what we've discussed in the past was for Sir John A. Macdonald to be stored away. It wasn't so much for these statues to be stored away.
Follow up, Ms. Middleholtz. I believe actually if we go back to the minutes, it quite clearly said in the report that the unfortunate four were also to be put into storage. So again, all due respect, this supplementary agreement being a change to an original agreement, I think puts me in too much of a position, legal liability. And as Mr. Bailey has already stated, we have a responsibility for 10 years. It did say, I believe, in the motion in the report that was sent back to us that the unfortunate four were also going to be put into storage.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, in that case, I would prefer to not comment further on this and speak to the township solicitor.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Gordick? Okay, thank you. Councillor Hallman.
Thanks, through the mayor. While Councillor Gordick was talking, I was trying to find that because that's ringing a bell for me as well. I thought that within that cost that came back at our August meeting, it included the storage of them. So that's ringing true for me and definitely needs follow up. So thank you, Ms. Middleholtz, for following up on that.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, that report was not received by council. That report was rejected by council. So nothing within that report has actually been approved by council. The subsequent, no, you rejected the report. You made an amendment or an amending resolution. However, the report itself was rejected.
A follow-up. So the cost that we approved as council did not include the cost of the other four statues. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I would have to take a look at the minutes and the resolution again. as to whether or not the resolution included the approval of any costs. It was my recollection at this time, it could be, my recollection may not be entirely accurate, but that the report was rejected, that a resolution was made more or less for staff just to take care of it. I'm paraphrasing terribly, but basically for staff to put it away in storage, and there was no real, excuse me, approval of costs. And certainly there was no mention of, in the resolution, of the unfortunate four. Excuse me.
And through the mayor, I have one more question.
Yeah.
With the attention brought by the delegation, Mr. Bailey, the township shall oversee the development and ongoing operations of educational programs. That is also concerning to me, and that is our responsibility for the development education. So can someone clarify for me that if it is my understanding that, so then if Nipissing or whomever would not be developing this, or things would shift, that would be our financial cost and burden to make sure that we are providing correct and current educational resources. That is our responsibility as a municipality.
I'm sorry, Councillor Hallman, would you mind repeating that question?
Sure, sorry about that. Referring to the point 7, where it says the township shall oversee the development and ongoing operation of an educational program. If we have a current agreement, I'm not sure what that looks like with Nipissing, so university. So I guess first is, do we have an agreement with them to provide this educational material? And then by us making follow-up, the next question is if we're having taking the responsibility for education, then that is now our financial responsibility to make sure that we have an educator to create this going forward.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I'm not aware of any agreement that's in place with Nipissing as to the scenario that you've played out there. That is not something I've ever considered. I have absolutely no idea.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So I just wanted to refer back to Ms. Middleholtz, and my apologies. I totally forgot with regards to the report. So my apologies with regards to that. I was thinking of the unfortunate four we had already taken care of. So thank you for clarifying that.
Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I think that this discussion really underlines that there are perhaps a lot more unknowns than is advisable to move forward with. I would like to ask the clerk if there's a reasonable timeline that she might feel comfortable committing to reach out to see if I would imagine that there's got to be a copy that has all of the language somewhere. And if perhaps that is able to be found, while I realize tonight what we're supposed to be voting on is not the original agreement, but the addition. However, there are enough questions that I think it's prudent for all of us to have a copy of that in front of us when we decide how to proceed, to make sure that we aren't getting ourselves into something we didn't expect or realize. And I would expect that the Prime Minister's Path CreateScape would be amenable to providing that. And I would expect they would also reasonably have a copy of it. So if the clerk feels comfortable in perhaps, I don't know, a week, if we could defer this, and when's our next council meeting? If we defer it either to the next council meeting or the mayor calls a special meeting in order to ensure that we deal with this in a timely fashion. Either way, I think I would move to defer this until we can resolve some of these questions.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I can at this time, I can't provide a timeline. I don't know what the workload of the other people are who I need to reach out to, so I'll have to check on that. But I can say at this point in time that the agreement that council has seen and has been made available to the public is the exact same one that CreateScape has.
Hey, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. And perhaps this would be to Dawn or Tracy, one or the other. If we don't approve this tonight, is there a timeline where we have to approve, like accepting the statues or paying the money?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So at this point in time, I have not, and I don't believe Ms. Locke has either been in contact with CreateScape, being advised that the statues are finished and ready for shipping, although I would imagine it is going to be sometime shortly. So exactly how much time that we still have, I'm unsure. Our next council meeting, my apologies, Councillor Fenning, I didn't respond to this one, is October 19th, is our next council meeting. And so as to whether or not we would find the information that you're looking for or have a response to provide you in a shorter time frame than that, I cannot comment on at this time either.
Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. I think it's certainly reasonable to defer the motion till the 19th till we get a more complete look at the original agreement that we're doing a supplemental agreement to. However, it should also be pointed out, I think, that the supplemental agreement, as Councillor Fenning noted earlier, I think is reasonable in the sense that the point that the clerk pointed out about the original agreement between receiving the statues and installing them, we do need to amend that procedure because we have expressed our plan is to receive the statue and not install them. And we also, I think, want to make sure that the artist is paid, and that money is coming from CreateScape currently, not from us, the township. So I think in order to maintain sort of those two important factors, the supplemental agreement, I think, is a reasonable agreement to the pause motion that was passed. However, finding out, if there's anything material from that spot between page 1 and page 2 that affects the action that we're taking right now, it is worth finding that out. I don't believe that to be the case, but none of us need to speculate. I guess we can sort of wait and see what we learn about that missing text. But I think that point, as far as, we do need to have something in place to make sure that we are covered for the eventuality that, the statue needs to be paid for. And we want to make sure that, that we honor the agreement, shield our taxpayers. The arrangement is that CreateScape pays the artist from the funds that they raise. And the supplement agreement allows for that to take place, allows for the transfer to us, and then allows for us to store it. And I think that's reasonable, given the time frame and, given obviously the consultation that needs to take place. And then 6 months from now, March 1st, or, if we need to defer that, however long the consultation takes, then we know what's happening with the statue. So the supplement agreement certainly does handle that one sort of outstanding factor from the decisions that we have made earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Gerber. Okay, so there is a recommendation. What is the will of council? Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I interpret that my colleagues are in agreement that we should defer, and I would move that.
Okay. Councillor Fisher.
Yes, through you, Mayor, I would agree to defer it too. Sorry.
So you're seconding the motion to defer?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Fenning, second by Councillor Fisher, that the supplementary agreement with Streetscape be deferred. Okay, all in favor? That is carried. The next item is the RFP award Constitution Park Playground. Ms. Jackson.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you very much. First of all, we have two playgrounds on the docket for this evening. The first one is Constitution Park. And before I give a brief overview, I'd just like to acknowledge that Amber Shank, who is my amazing project coordinator, is on the meeting this evening in case there's any questions that I'm not able to answer. So thank you, Amber. So this report requests council support to award a contract for additional playground equipment at Constitution Park, which is on Hinks Street in New Hamburg. This is the second phase of playground replacement. You may recall in 2019, a project that occurred in this same park because the equipment at that location had reached the end of its life. And there was a considerable amount of the budget required to be spent on drainage improvements last year. So the number of features was less than what we would have liked to have included at that location. So a second project was added to the 2020 budget, and we received 4 submissions for that project. And the recommendation for this evening is to award this project to Play Power based in Paris. And the project cost is $47,000, including taxes, which nets to the $42,000 that was in this budget for this project. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any at this time.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you through the mayor to Ms. Jackson. Can you comment further on the involvement with the community on the pieces for this?
Yeah, sure. I was not with the township last year when the first installation of the playground was included, but Ms. Shank did confirm with me that after public consultation, when the first phase was put in and so much of the budget was spent on the underground work and the drainage, the additional features, the features that were missing was something that we made sure was included in this budget. So specifically, the community was looking for climbing pieces in the apparatus, as well as equipment that allows the kids to run at an elevated level so they can play games like Grounder. And so it was adding back features that were in the original playground that weren't affordable last year. So that has definitely been included. And this design was selected as a result of meeting those public requests.
A follow-up? Thank you for clarifying those details and meeting the request of the community. That's amazing that the missing pieces that the community were missing with the previous playground are included in this. So thank you to staff for bringing that back to the community.
Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Ms. Jackson, just curious as to, or Ms. Shank, actually, depending on, because of the project management part of it, when are we expected for the park to be, or the playground equipment to be installed? Being obviously that we're getting into the fall season, I know that construction sometimes goes a little bit farther, but just curious as to the time frame.
I believe that the timeline is late November, early December, but maybe Amber, if you can confirm that for me.
Hello. Hi, through you, Mayor. Yes, the playground has been requested to be installed no later than December 11th, and Play Power has indicated that they will be able to meet that date.
Thank you, Amber. Nothing further, Councillor Gordick? No. Councillor Gerber?
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just wish to pass along to Ms. Jackson and Ms. Schenk our appreciation for finishing this project. We know we had sort of high hopes for the original installation, and we know that it turns out they did not quite meet the community's requests and desires. So I appreciate the willingness to sort of dig in again, and I know we had plans for a future phase, but just to sort of round that out and bring that to completion. And I mean, yeah, that's an optimistic, construction schedule. So hopefully the weather cooperates and people can actually see it in place yet. I guess I can't quite say this fall, but this winter, and in place for the next play season. And I know the neighborhood will really appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation before you is that RFP 2020-22 be awarded to Play Power Limited Canada Inc. for the design, supply, and installation of phase 2 of the playground replacement at Constitution Park, New Hamburg, as per the proposal dated September 23rd, 2020, in the amount of $47,336, including HST. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gerber. All in favor? That is carried. Next item is Optimus Park Playground.
Thank you, Mayor. So this playground is part of the ongoing replacement of aging playground equipment across the township. This one has reached its end of life. And as part of the Parks, Recreation and Facilities Master Plan, we are working through a number of playgrounds to get them updated and modernized. So this park is in a newly developed area, as I'm sure you're aware, with lots of young families in that area. And we certainly want to keep the kids active and outside. So this is will be a great improvement. There were also 4 bids for this submission, similar to Constitution Park. There were some very creative designs in this RFP response, and we had some fun picking out what we feel is the best project for this neighborhood. And the proposal includes some traditional equipment such as swings and slides, as well as some very creative nature-themed spider webs to climb on and centipedes and other fun things to interact. So I challenge all members of council, once this is in, to come and play. So the recommendation with this RFP is that it be awarded to Open Space Solutions, which is located in our neighboring Wellesley Township. And the value of this is $98,000, including taxes, so nets out at 88, which is within the budget allocation. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Seeing none. So we have a recommendation. Oh, Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just have one question. I'm looking at the design here. Director, do you think that spider web thing would hold me?
Absolutely. It's going to hold me, so it'll hold you.
Okay. So the recommendation that RFP 2020-23 be awarded to Open Space Solutions, Inc. for the design, supply, installation, and removal of the existing playground equipment at Youth Optimus Park, New Hamburg, as per their proposal dated September 23rd, 2020, in the amount of $98,168, including HST. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fanning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is correspondence. Letter from Mr. Roth. And is Mr. Bailey still on the line as a delegation, or did he address this already? Mr. Bailey? One more time, Mr. Bailey, are you there? Okay, I think that's.
Oh, sorry, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the question?
The correspondence from Mr. Roth. Did you wish to speak to it, or did you already address that?
I've already addressed my concerns about that. I think my biggest question is that clearly he's not a Wilmot resident, and I am. I pay taxes here. He doesn't. He's entitled to have his opinion, but when it comes to public discourse on these issues, I feel that I should have a voice, and that somebody who does not live in Wilmot Township should not have a voice. So that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions from council? Seeing none. So the recommendation that item 12.1 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gerber. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
So for the bylaw approval, you're just calling it 2020-36, not 37.
What do you want as amended? Okay. The next item is the bylaws and the recommendation that bylaw numbers 2020-36 as amended and 2020.
Sorry. The bylaw number 2020-36 be read first, second, third time. If finally passed an open
Okay,
council.
you want to do separately?
No, 37 is not.
Oh, right, sorry.
Because the proposed.
Thank you. I appreciate the correction. Okay, the recommendation that bylaw number 2020-36 be read first, second, and third time as amended and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Are there any notice of motions? Seeing none, any announcements? Councillor Fisher.
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong, just happy to see the Rotary Wilmot and Interfaith Counseling come out with a fundraising calendar for this year, or for 2021, should say. Cost of $25 with weekly draws of $50 gift certificates from local merchants. This helps not only Interfaith, but also many merchants in the area. And to me, I think it's a terrific idea.
I agree, and I think they said there's only 300 calendars being printed. So it increases your odds a lot better. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor. Today is World Teacher Day, and I just wanted to express my sincere and deep appreciation to all who are providing caring, supportive environments, either online or in person, for the children of this community and even adults learning in our community as well. So thank you for that. And also just wanted to comment on happy Thanksgiving to anyone who's celebrating. I've received a lot of questions from people of the community looking for guidance, and I just wanted to direct people to the resources published by the Region of Waterloo on their Public Health COVID-19 newsletter that was published October 2nd. There's some great guidelines and comments there about how to have a smaller, safe Thanksgiving and following the provincial guidelines.
Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. And actually, this is to Chair Redmond. Challenge accepted. We are accepting the challenge to donate to the Waterloo Region Food Bank. And all of council was challenged in an email from the chair. So we will be participating in that challenge. It is Thanksgiving coming up this weekend. And there are a lot of people, especially now through COVID, who don't have the kind of Thanksgiving that we might all dream of. So I think each one that can should do everything that we can to help out our neighbors in need and make it a happy Thanksgiving for everyone. On that note, locally as well, I urge you to check out Wilmot Stronger Together Facebook page if you're on Facebook, and otherwise check out the information at the Sobeys store in New Hamburg directly. Bill and Jill have put together a phenomenal program to support our local food bank in Wilmot at the Wilmot Family Resource Center. And Bill and Jill, thank you so much for being an amazing addition to our community and for everything you do to support everyone here.
Thank you, Councillor Fenning, and really appreciate the shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Fleming, because they do an awful lot for our community. We certainly appreciate their contributions. And no other announcements. So the next item is the confirmatory bylaw. That bylaw number 2020-38 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on October 5th, 2020, be introduced, read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And finally, that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. Moved by Councillor Gordick. Councillor Fisher finally wanted somebody else to go home. So all in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you those who participated tonight.